Hi, my name is Jon Blass. I'm a Grammy Award-winning mixing engineer, and today I have you here in my studio to showcase a Dolby Atmos mix. My room is set up as a Dolby Atmos-enabled 714 system, meaning I have 7 speakers around, low-frequency effects channel, and 4 speakers above me. All of my speakers are Atom Audio A7Vs. And I'm gonna take you through a mix I did in, actually mixed this in stereo and Dolby Atmos for an artist named Trilogy, produced by my friend Dana Saray. This is on their newest Christmas album that just came out last week. I thought this was a fun mix and had some cool things we could show you guys in Atmos. So why don't we start by playing it, and let me let you know that what we're recording for you is the Dolby binaural rendering of Dolby Atmos, the best representation we can give you through headphones. So I'd recommend wearing both your AirPods or putting headphones on for this, and we'll try to show you as best we can how Dolby Atmos works. So let's play the song so you can hear what we're talking about, and we'll go from there.
All that I ask is that you dream of me. All that I ask is that you find me. Find me in your dreams, find me in your dreams, yeah. Find me in your dreams, find me in your dreams, yeah. Another year, it's you that I don't have the feeling I can't grab. It's just not in my reach. I practice what I preach. I let go of the leash, relinquish my control. Wait for you to come to me. While I wait, I'll sleep. Dreaming of the possibilities that will set us free. I let your song become the melody this Christmas. All that I ask is that you dream of me. All that I ask is that you find me. Find me in your dreams, find me in your dreams, yeah. Find me in your dreams, find me in your dreams, yeah. Living another December, bad habits I will dismember. The person you could be comes to mind when I'm asleep. My dreams, they are cerebral, REM to console, resuscitate my mind. Let's see what I can find when I dream. Dream of all the happy memories. It's just you and me. Will you let my song become your melody this Christmas? All that I ask is that you dream. All that I ask is that you find me. Find me in your dreams, find me in your dreams, yeah. Find me in your dreams, find me in your dreams, yeah.
Imagine just what we could be.
So that was the mix in its entirety. Let me go through, I kind of show you how my session is set up, and we'll try to cover some like basic concepts of Atmos as we kind of go through how I handled this mix and what we did in this session. So just so you're accustomed to how I have my session set up, you will see in here I have the mastered version, the stereo mastered version, so that we can quickly and easily reference it, because that's sort of what we need to that's what we're up against, right? That's what we have to maintain the vibe of. That's what we need to match, both sonically as well as like in sync. They need to be lined up exactly the same for them to play back correctly on streaming services. So I have those. I have them coming out on output, so I can write on my monitor controller, switch between the stereo reference and the Atmos mix back and forth and back and forth, so I can make sure that we're not missing anything, that we have the same vibe, the same groove, the same intent of the artist. So that's that, and then I'll take you to the top of the session here. We'll have time code. This is what talks between Pro Tools and the renderer so that they stay in sync and that the metadata that gets transferred to the renderer is all where it needs to be. I'm also using the Binaural settings plugin to dictate which settings we have for all of the objects. Those settings are near, mid, far, or off, and those are only translated in the binaural. So you will hear those today. Those do not get translated into any difference in speakers, nor on Apple Spatial, because Apple Spatial uses the speaker format, not the binaural re-render. I will show you that difference plainly after we get through this. We also have, these are speaker returns, basically just how I'm getting from the renderer back through Pro Tools to the speakers. They're just pass-through routing. I don't look at them. They're all just there, but because I have, because I'm using my HD native card as the output, so I can seamlessly go between Atmos sessions and stereo sessions. I'm using the Dolby Atmos, the Dolby Bridge as an aux output, but that means I have to get everything back into Pro Tools to get it out to my interface. So that's all those are. That way that I have that set up allows me to switch on my monitor controller seamlessly between the binaural, the Atmos, the stereo, and the Apple Spatial Audio. So I have a re-render going to Logic so that I can hear that directly while I'm mixing as well. Next, we have just an LFE router. The way I get to the .1, the LFE channel, is through direct sends from channels. Dolby does dictate that you filter that in the session. We don't rely on the playback system to filter your LFE channel. So we filter that here so that the only things getting to the LFE channel are low frequencies, basically. Next, I have I have a 904 mix bus. You've definitely heard, if you've spent any time with Atmos, that there is no mix bus in Atmos, and that's correct. And also, we sort of fake it sometimes. So what I'm using here is a 904 with aux channel, and it feeds an object bed, which those are all here. Basically, I pick off all of, like, each of the channels of the 904 object bed and assign them to their own object. So that works very well for ease of routing and a simplification of outputs. We also have the bed. Atmos is comprised of beds and objects. You can have more than one bed. By default, it generally comes with one bed. These are the ones that are in purple up here on the renderer, and all these down here are the objects that are being used. So let's, can I start by showing you the near far, the binaural settings, what that sounds like. I pulled in something not from the session just because I thought it was easier to hear. So this is something that I won't hear right now because I don't have headphones on, but you will hear clearly the difference here. So I just have them on different objects: a near object, a mid object, and a far object. And this is just a piano from a random song that I grabbed. In mono, I felt like that was the easiest way to show this. So this is near. Mid. and far. You should clearly hear like a lot more space, especially on that far one. Here's near again. And far. And that's just a way for inside the Dolby format to create extra dimension and room in headphones. I think a lot of people's misconception is that like, oh, can't you just do that with panning? Like it seems like this should be near and this should be far. But in reality, this is against the wall here where it's hitting just the speakers. And if you, here, let's do this. If I play this, you'll see it's only coming out the right speaker. And when I play it in far, also only the right speaker. If I move that, so here is not necessarily closer, it's just coming from both sides, which does not have the same effect as being closer to you. So that's why that exists, and that's why we pay attention to those different object settings, particularly for the headphone binaural mix. Okay, let's start with the drums here. There's not a lot of tracks of drums. The main thing of drums was printed as one when it was sent to me. So there's no separation there. Just so you know where this session came from, the stereo mix was approved. And then what I did was open up my own stereo mix session and print stems, basically, of I think every track. So every track in this session is its own track in this session, but it's printed. So it has all of the processing that was on it, and it went through the 2-bus stuff that I used on the stereo mix. That is not always how I mix an Atmos. It is always how I mix an Atmos when other people do the stereo. When I do both, I've done it a few different ways, and this was the best option for this song, given how it was interacting with the 2-bus and the fact that this was not from the beginning going to be an Atmos mix as well as stereo. This seemed like the best option. So these are all these tracks here are printed from the stereo mix and brought back into here. So theoretically, you play them all back, it is the stereo mix. That's never exactly perfect because of, you know, when you solo something, it hits compressors differently than if you play the full mix back through it. Not to mention, you know, saturation and clipping and anything else that may have been used. So there are some differences, and there are also, anytime you move something in space, it changes how it feels and changes how loud it sounds. You know that from panning in stereo. If you pan it in the middle and then pan it off to the side, you're like, oh, now I can hear it, it sounds louder. Atmos adds a whole other dimension of that, and maybe if everything was coming out of the left-right speakers, it could sound pretty close, but then you pull stuff into the room a little bit, and oh, now this sticks out, and now this is buried, and this feels like too much. So there's a lot of finagling that can happen, depending on the mix and depending on all of the things and how it needs to go. But so let's start with this loop. The loop I put on its own object. Actually, all these drums I put on their own object and near objects, so I wanted them to sound close to me. And that is, they're all on their own objects and all pulled back into the room just a bit. I put it at 80 there. The reason they're on their own objects instead of going through the mix bus is because they're in between speakers, and it translates better in binaural if it is its own object then. If it's going through an object bed and it's between two objects, it can change how loud it sounds in binaural compared to the speakers. So that is why these are on their own objects. And I didn't do much to these, right? It's literally, I just pulled them into the room a little bit. The processing all stayed the same. I did on the kick add some of it to the low LFE channel. Not a lot. It didn't need a lot, but that's something I also always check with binaural and with Apple Spatial, as well as in the room, to make sure that that's translating the way I want to and giving me the low end in the way that feels right for this song. Also on the hats, I actually raised them up in the room some. So that's there. They're not all the way up. They are all the way forward. But since they're not all the way up, again, they're in between objects on the object bed, so I made them their own object. Still near though. So let me play that too for you. Height can be a little tricky to hear, especially on headphones, but let me play that for you. Here's all the way down. And all the way up. I want you to be able to hear that difference. I just wanted the hi-hats to be lifted up a little bit. They're a high frequency sound. It helps fill the space a little bit in the Atmos room and pulls it out of itself a little bit. So here are all the drums together. Not a lot to talk about there. Added the bass in. The bass is actually all the way forward in the left and right channels with a little bit of the subwoofer sent as well. I forgot I did this, but on the snare, it came with this delay. So what I did was automate it so that every time that snare hits, the delay kind of moves behind you. It's not real obvious in the mix, but again, it to me felt like a way to maintain the integrity of the sound and help fill the space and make it an interesting mix in Atmos without being gimmicky or obvious. So. You will see on the renderer, as I play that, you'll see the objects that we're using, which are all these drum objects, where they're placed and their binaural setting. So you'll see that that snare effect move back in the room while you hear it as well. There's a few percussion elements, chimes, crashes, that I felt like they were fine exactly where they were. They are not moving, they're not doing anything. They are right, left, right. Let's see, we'll get to the guitar in a little while. The pad, I just moved back into the room. To me, it helped. Help give this expansive feel, where something comes in kind of almost behind you. Those are going directly to the side speakers, and I put that on its own object, even though it's going directly to a speaker, directly to an object that would be in the mix bus, but I wanted it to be a far setting. So because I don't have those in the object bed, I used its own object so I could put it far and give it more space and more distance. Now, this harp is kind of the main instrument here, and I made it mid, its own object, but mid, and both put it up in the room a little bit and pulled it into the space a little bit. So 68 would be like where the wide speakers would be if this was a 914 room. But I brought it up a little bit just to give it an extra bit of dimension. And it also has a reverb on it that we'll discuss in a minute too. So you won't hear the reverb here because I'm soloing it and the reverb's printed, but this is that. So pulling it off of the left-right speakers brings it into the room a little bit, makes it a little bit spacier sounding, and giving it just a little bit of dimension to the heights helps pull it into the room. Let's grab that reverb. I believe it is this one, and I'll show you what I'm doing with that. So this is being upmixed. There's a couple different strategies I use with effects. One of them would be to use a printed reverb or whatever the effect is and use an upmixer. Upmixers can be beautiful on certain items, not great for a whole mix, but this Halo by Nugent Audio is wonderful. It has height added into it. You can, I think this is a 712 version. And so it will take the stereo and kind of put it in all the speakers, which you should be able to hear in the binaural and also see on the renderer here. I have that going out the bed instead of the object bed, primarily because it's a 712 anyway. So having it upmixed to 712 and going out a 712 channel seemed to work, seemed to make a lot of sense to me. The other consideration why I might put a reverb or an effect through a bed instead of the object bed would be for processing differences. If I'm using a limiter on the object bed and the objects to help contain it, match it more to the mastered stereo, that kind of thing, it might be really useful to have the reverbs be stuck in that same dimension where it's getting hit by the kick drums and the snare drums and whatever's being limited. But also if it's coming out the bed, you don't have to. So it might be nice to have the effects not be tied to the limiting that you want on the tracks. So that's why I have that going out the bed. There is no processing difference on the bed in this particular song, but you can, which is nice. So this plate that I used, this might have been one that came on the session, I can't remember, but it wasn't one that had a immersive version, and I liked the way it sounded and didn't want to change the way it sounded, so we printed it and upmixed it. There are plenty of sessions where I will use the exact same reverb, but like let's say I like to use a wood room in Seventh Heaven quite often for my snare drum on a track with live drums. And Seventh Heaven also has an immersive version, right? So I can easily swap out that snare verb for a natural, 714 or 712 or however many widths it is, and get that same room, but captured for the right space. So I will sometimes do that, but in this situation, and I think for all of these in this session, because of the reverbs that were used, this was the one that made sense. So this harp gliss, again, I wanted it to be like spacey, right? It's kind of a, here, let me play it for you. It's like it's a harp gliss, right? Like you want it to feel kind of all around you and that kind of thing. The solution I decided to end up using was Slapper, which is a multi-channel delay plugin. And it's just using a bunch of shorter delays that kind of go all over the room to make it feel spacey. So to me, that's one of those things where I feel like I know what the intent of that sound is, and even though I'm gonna change it a little bit here with delays, it's doing the effect better in my mind. So, assuming the artist agrees, that's that's how I view those kinds of decisions. We're always trying to get to what the intent is of the original mix and of the production and the artist's intent. And to me, that was the most effective way to get that gliss to be in an immersive space and give you that feeling of a glissando. Next, we have another fun plugin. This track here, let me just play it without it real quick. And it just kind of does this, right? It's kind of this underlying thing. Some special moments here, but I wanted a little bit of interest, a little bit of intrigue. So I used a plugin called Energy Panner. And again, this is a 702 output. So I have it going out the bed, and it basically moves things around based on a threshold. And so here's what it's doing. So as it's hitting that, every time it beeps, basically, it's hitting a threshold and it's moving the panning around. If you go all the way wet, then I feel like we take away from the intent of the sound. I think I had it down here somewhere, where now I feel like it adds movement without being like a distracting, annoying kind of sound. So I'm using that plugin to create movement on that synth there. A couple more tracks to go through here before we get to all the effects, but this is a synth. Not much to it, but I just, and this is going out the bus, it's just a small little thing, but just had it automate it to move, basically, so that as the tape stop happens, the track goes, you kind of thing. This does not show up loudly in the mix and isn't a big part of it. But it contributes, and again, adds just a little bit of movement that is nice. So we'll cover these last two tracks together with the guitar, since they're all in the same area. This reverse vocal effect, I just left it where it was. Nothing doing there. And then we'll handle vocals, but let's get through the rest of these instruments first. So the ending, let me play it for you. Three different sounds here that make this ending different. One is this guitar. Reverb already printed right on it, but it did have on the track a delay plugin that was like, the mix knob was set, so it was baked into the track. When I printed it, I turned that off, and then I turned it 100% and printed it again so that I could have the delay separate from the dry signal, the one with the reverb. And what I did on this was just put it in different places. So the delay is all the way in the back, the dry signal is in the front at the wide position, basically. Which just really makes the room feel like it's moving a little bit and has some interest and intrigue and puts the delay in a different space than the guitar. This synth pluck, I just have it coming out the side speakers. And then this pluck, this is the more spacey one. So I brought it up in the room so it would fill the room a bit better with some height dimension, and made its own object. So it was a mid thing and would hopefully translate nicely into dimension with headphones. So that's what those are doing, and how we're getting to the end of the song. Now with vocals, having a dry vocal in Atmos is really helpful. So what I did was print all the vocals dry. There's 2 lead vocals. There's 3 people in this group, and the 2 females sang the leads on this song, and they each sing their own parts on the background vocals. So I printed a lead vocal, and I have it going straight left right, so that to me, it's on this mix at least, it's working best to keep the translation to what it felt like in the stereo mix. There's upsides and downsides of different options there, and I've done several. In fact, I didn't do this on the last album I did, but this is what I chose for this one. And it's a dry lead vocal then.
All that I ask is that you dream of me. All that I ask is that you find me. Find me in your dreams. Find me in your dreams, yeah. Find me.
And you'll see that that's coming out just the left and right channels there. Since I corrected, I had it at 99 there, but it should be at 100.
All that I ask is that you dream.
So just the left-right channels, so you're hearing the phantom center like you do in a stereo mix, which is comfortable and you're used to that. The artist is used to that. It works really well. Same with Sierra.
Living another day. Bad habits I will diss.
And those like octave things were baked into the mix when I got it, so that's part of that. So there's a few different things going on effect-wise. The one you'll see, I have a send on these tracks, where I just told you, I think I printed all the effects, except this one actually. So this one, it was a delay, and I wanted the delay to move, but it was a delay that it was already set. It was what it was. It's an Echo Boy, so we'll see that in a minute. But I didn't want to change the delay. To me, that was a part of it. I didn't want to change it. I just wanted it to have dimension. So this is that delay. What I chose to do instead was use the send. I just imported this from the stereo mix. I used the send to trigger the same delay, but pulled the feedback down, and then duplicated that and left the feedback where it was, I believe. And then I added a compressor behind it and sidechained it to the original delay, if that makes any sense. So basically what we have is the delay send is feeding both of these channels. But initially, you're hearing this first one because this one's getting brought down by a compressor. And then as this one lets go, you hear the one that's in the back. So this one's panned all the way in the back. This one's panned all the way in the front, well, at the wide position. So it's a little bit more space than the dry lead vocal. So here's how that worked.
All that I ask is that you dream of me. All that I ask is that you find me. Find me in your dreams. Find me in your dreams, yeah. Find me in your.
Basically, you sort of feel it in the front, and then as the tail goes, you hear it in the back more. So that was my solution to that delay, and I just muted the print I had of the delay. There's also a verb that I used in the mix. I decided to do the up mix. What's nice about this up mixer too is that you can tell it has to be exactly the same when it down mixes by pressing that button, and you can hear the source So that's just the stereo, or you can hear the up mix, and then you can hear the down mix. So that's that reverb, helps give the vocal, it helps the vocal occupy the full space. There's a bunch of different effects here, so let's see what we did with all of these. Some of them, not much. This one, I believe, is just pan automated. And I think I kept it in the back. Let's see. And that one I have moving up and back a little bit. This sort of ending effect is not moving, but it's up and back, which really gives space to this this drop into the breakdown.
Imagine just what we could be.
That's that same part, but a drier delay that was going along with it. I would just have it all the way in the back on the bottom, so that together they kind of do this. Vocal doubler. I know a lot of those were baked into the lead vocal. This one was separate, so I was able to separate it from the lead vocal and actually put it in the back, which kind of gives this effect here.
Find me in your dreams, find me in your dreams, yeah. Find me in your dreams, find me in your dreams, yeah. Another year, it's
cool. Last one, this one's a BGV delay, so we'll cover that with the background vocals. And then the space delay, again, I decided to up mix because it's a very spacey kind of effect that has a lot of intrigue in the mix, even in stereo. So
dreaming of the possibility you could be comes to mind when I'm asleep. My dreams, they are cerebral, REM to console, resuscitate my mind. Let's see what I can. You could be comes to mind when I'm asleep. My dreams, they are cerebral, REM to console, resuscitate.
I'm adding quite a bit more of the height speakers into this one than I did some of the other effects too. I just really wanted that to fill up the space and be special. I love that part. So let's cover some of these background vocals. Because of the way this group is situated, these three people that very much are the group together, all three of them will do lead vocals. They all have their background vocal parts. I decided to kind of put them in the room kind of equally, but stacked along the sides, basically. So soprano, alto, tenor kind of thing. We'll cover this part first because this is sort of the main background vocals.
Dream, find me.
So because I'm putting them along the wall like that, I again decided to make them their own objects and near objects because I wanted them very present, right? These are important vocal parts, though we call them background vocals. They're important in this kind of song. So so that's what those are. Sopranos are at the wings. The tenors are kind of in the same position but in the back essentially, and then the altos are in the side position there. This first pre-chorus, they're a little bit different, and they have a different sound and a different style, and I had added more reverb to them in the stereo mix. I decided on this to just bring that reverb right in and let them be what they are, but I put them on separate objects because I felt like mid, giving them a little bit more space in the headphones worked better. It's a little subtle for this kind of part, but I liked it better than I did the mid or the close. So here's that part.
While I wait, I'll sleep, dreaming of the possibilities that will set us free. I let your song become the melody this Christmas. All that I ask is that you dream of me. All that I ask is that you.
To me, when they hit the chorus, they're more important. I want them to feel closer to me. And in this pre-chorus, to me, they're a verby, like ethereal kind of thing. So I put them on a separate object. Again, with the ending, we have a little bit different.
Dreaming in heavenly peace. Imagine just what we could be.
So if I remember correctly, this was another situation where they had a delay plugin on the track with the mix knob blended. And so I printed one at 0 and one at 100 so that I could bring them in together and basically separate them so that the ending is kind of at the wings position, a little bit wide, and the delay I brought farther back and up into the space so that it's close and then the delay is up here.
Dreaming in heavenly peace. Imagine just what we could be.
That also allows me in the binaural to make the delay mid while the background vocal, the dry signal, is near, which gives us just a little bit more of the dimension that we're looking for. Lastly, we had an extra whisper track here that it was separate. Everything else is on its own object, so but it's on its own object and made it near so those whispers would feel a little close to you here, right?
Comes to mind when
And that goes into this special BGV delay that we have here.
bad habits I will dismember. The person you could be comes to mind when I'm asleep.
And again, I used a different philosophy, or a different setting here, but same philosophy as the glissando, using slapper to create that dimension and movement. You'll see the it's coming out the bed, so you can't see the objects move, but you can see the speakers as it goes through. Kind of moves its way into the back, which to me added a nice dimension, especially I think it interplays with some other delays and things transitioning into that section there. So
The person you could be comes to mind when I'm asleep. My dreams, they are cerebral, REM to console, resuscitate my mind. Let's see what I can find when I dream of the.
and that is all the tracks. And what I did with each part in this particular production. I will say that sometimes when we get to the end of this, like, okay, cool, I think this is sounding good the way we want it to. One thing we have to be cognizant of in Atmos is loudness limitations. Dolby Atmos requires that you have a max loudness of an integrated -18 LUFS, which is very quiet. A typical stereo master is, -7 or so, or that's exactly the reason why I dropped the mastered stereo file down to match -18, so that when I A/B, as best I can, we have level matching, so that I'm not, if you're comparing something that's 10 dB louder, it's impossible to have any context really. Louder always sounds better. So if we have to be at -18, then I want to reference -18, and we also have to be at -1 dB true peak as well. You don't have to be at it, you have to be at or below it. Same with the -18. So those things can get very tricky, especially in depending on where the files came from and how they were mastered and all of that kind of thing, how dynamic the song is. It can be really difficult to get that. What I'm doing on this particular song is using a limiter that is side-chained to sends that are on every channel, basically, which essentially is giving me the idea of a two-bus, basically. So we're compressing everything linked to the exact same sidechain. On the renderer, you will see as you play back, you will see meters for each of your speaker outputs as well as your binaural, and then you will also get readings for LUFS. So this one right here, integrated level gated, is what has to be at -18 or below, and dB true peak over here has to be at -1 or below. And that's for translatability more than anything. When the whole concept of an Atmos mix is that it's one mix that can be played back on any system that Dolby Atmos enabled, of course. And that, so it doesn't matter if there's a speaker, 2 speakers, 60 speakers, like it's going to take the same file and do the best math it can to figure out what to play and how to play it and which speaker should play it. So that means if you have, okay, so let's say I'm mixing in 714 here, we fold that down to 2 speakers, that's a lot more sound that has to come out 2 speakers. So having a lot of headroom is very important for them to be able to get that to happen without a lot of distortion on consumer playback devices. So that's why, at least currently, we have a -18 LUFS requirement and that -1 dB true peak. Those numbers, those requirements also give you a lot more headroom. If you're mixing at, if you're turning in mixes or masters at -7, you don't have a lot of headroom. At -18, you have a ton of it. And so there can be kind of a challenge of how do you maximize the headroom that you have, because you can better utilize transients and low end, while also maintaining the feel and the glue and the dynamic range of something that's much more squished, and that doesn't have that much headroom. So it can be a bit of a balancing act and a bit of a game, and there are times when I am not at all using all of my headroom because I need to match what was done in stereo. And if we have too much dynamic range there, it doesn't feel right. So it's and other times I can have a good balance where I feel like, okay, cool, like this is what they want, but a little bit better, right? Because it's because I can better utilize that that dynamic range to get them what they were really trying to get, but were running into limitations of headroom. So yeah, it's a bit of a back and forth at times, but those numbers are important in terms of getting mixes approved and uploaded correctly and played back correctly. So that's how I'm using this mix sidechain that you'll see, as well as the Pro-Ls that are on every output channel. So any object bed, the mix bus, and the actual bed. There we go. So now, after we've checked that we are at the correct loudness and that everything is working, if we're happy with the mix, we can literally bounce to disk the same way you do in stereo. If you click Wave Dolby Atmos, and it will auto-populate however many objects are being used, which if that's wrong, that's a good thing to check. It's telling me how many we're using, telling me where to print it, and you can literally just print it. After that is printed, to send it out to someone, sending them a ADM file, ADM B-Wave is what that's called. That is the full thing. So that's what you'll need to turn into labels. That's what you need to give to mastering, that kind of thing. But to send it to a client, they're not going to know what to do with that or be able to play it back very well, very easily. So unless they're maybe reviewing in an Atmos studio somewhere, but if they're having to listen over headphones, the easiest thing to do is import that into the renderer. And then you can check the loudness, which we should definitely do here because I changed some things since I last checked this. But it's a good thing to make sure that you're actually at -18 and that your print came out the way you thought it was going to. I'm at -18.3 and -2.2. Those are the two numbers we really need to worry about. -18.3 is below -18, so we're good, and -2.2 is below -1, so we're good. And then once it's in there, so I have imported the wave, right? The Atmos mix here. We can export it as a MP4 here. Open, export, and that MP4 is what you can send to someone's iPhone where they can download it and play it back in spatial audio with the correct AirPods and all that. You can also export a re-render of the .bin file, which they can play back on any headphone, and that's what you are currently listening to. A lot of people like to listen to the Apple Spatial because that's what they're most concerned about, because that's where a lot of people are listening to Atmos mixes these days. And that's why I find it invaluable to be able to, on my monitor controller, switch back and forth so we know what we're hearing. They are drastically different. So once it's exported, you can just close, cancel, and then close the master file that you have here so that it can go back into sync mode and be attached to what you're playing back. Thanks for watching. Again, my name is Jon Blass, and this is the song Dreams by Trilogy on their Christmas album that just came out this year.